Cruising. It's the ultimate in independence and self-sufficiency, right? Or is it? Hi, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I share how cruisers come together to help each other, even when they've never met. Now, today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Marine Depot Direct, your source for affordable, quality stainless steel hardware. Upgrade your boat with marine-grade stainless steel hardware and accessories like port lights, deck hatches, through hulls, and much more. Make your boat restoration easy and affordable. Use coupon code BG15 for 15% off your first order. MarineDepotDirect.com. Affordable stainless for your boat. Random acts of kindness, paying it forward. What goes around comes around. Cruisers helping cruisers. Or just being helpful. Call it what you may. It's the cruiser way. When we first began cruising in 2002, Dave and I were astounded at how helpful other cruisers were. Answering all of our dumb newbie questions, showing us easier ways to do things, giving us rides, and more. And not just one or two people. Everyone, it seemed. As time went on and we weren't the newcomers anymore, we started getting back as we were able. In fact, that's how I began writing articles. We'd read everything we could find about hurricane and storm anchoring before Hurricane Marty hit us, and I wanted to add to the knowledge by passing on the experiences that the boats near us had with different anchoring techniques. Now, probably the greatest story of reaping what you sow that I know of is the story of the cat's meow, which also began with Hurricane Marty. The hurricane made a direct hit on Puerto Escondido in the Sea of Cortez. And despite it being a great hurricane hole, a number of boats went aground. There were no towing services in the area. If boats were going to be rescued, it was going to be done by other cruisers. The Cat's Meow, a converted fishing trawler, was by far the largest boat in the area, with a monstrous engine. Her owners, Robin and Martin Hardy, didn't have to be asked to serve as the tugboat. They just did it, with help from numerous other cruisers. Thanks to them, 11 boats were refloated and towed to safety. Now, while we'd known Robin and Martin previously, we became quite good friends during the rescues. And about 6 months later, they invited us to join them for a couple of days at a nearby hot springs anchorage. The first evening there, just after we left their boat from having shared dinner with 2 other couples, a katabatic wind hit with gusts over 35 knots. In the dark, of course. As we were securing our dinghy and checking our anchor, we saw the Cat's Meow motor off their anchor and circle around us and go right back to the rock they had been anchored next to. When the wind had first hit, they had bumped on the bottom, decided to move and re-anchor, somehow gotten disoriented, and were now hard aground. All of us there worked feverishly to try to free them, one boat even bumping their own keel and trying to pull the Cat's Meow free. But at 2 a.m., the falling tide made it clear that the situation was dire. Dave and I knew Robin and Martin the best, and we convinced them to leave their boat and ferried them and their cats to the largest of the other boats. And then we called on the radio for a gas-powered pump to be brought at first light. We went to bed to try to get a few hours' sleep. Apparently, numerous boats in the area heard that radio call and passed it on during the early morning nets. When we got up and looked outside early the next morning, there were 10 boats anchored where there had just been 4 the night before, and more were motoring in. All day, they just kept showing up. Cruisers from 100 miles away sent money and food by car, along with supplies to patch and float the Cat's Meow. 2 boats that were over 100 miles away, in the middle of a 4-day passage crossing the Sea of Cortez, turned around and came to help. A Mexican Navy ship heard about the situation and came with an offer to try to pull the cat's meow off the rocks. And when the cat's meow was severely holed in ungrounding and sank in about 12 feet of water, people from all those boats helped Robin and Martin patch her and refloat her. Yes, part of it was in recognition of what Robin and Martin had done for others the year before. But almost none of the boats that helped them were the ones that they had directly helped. In fact, most of them had never met Robin and Martin. It was simply part of you do what you can, or what I call the cruiser way. Cruisers helping. One of the reasons that I began the Boat Galley, way back in 2010, was to pay it forward for all the help Dave and I had gotten while we were cruising. Maybe we weren't right in the anchorage with people, but I could pass on the little things we'd learned through the power of the internet. Then we headed back out cruising. We were on the receiving end again. When we first arrived in Boot Key Harbor, our very first year, one of the first people we saw was a guy who had been in the boatyard with us. He'd already gone back to get his car and offered to give us a ride to get ours. A little over 200 miles each way. All he'd take was gas money. We didn't ask him. I'm not even going to say he volunteered. He just sort of told us how it was going to be. Come on, you'll get in my car and go with me. Now, through the years, others have given us all sorts of local information on where to get things. We've had several offers of rides to various places. We've had so many offers of help figuring out engine problems. When Dave had his hip replacement, when we've had some other medical problems, the list goes on and on and on. But seriously, it may have been 20-some years since we began cruising. But it seems that the cruiser way is still just as strong as it ever was. I'm glad. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of the Boat Galley podcast, please help others to be able to find us and get the information they need about cruisers. Leave a review on your favorite podcast app. Thanks.